Hello my fellow gamers and City Skylines fans. This video is a direct continuation of my previous traffic guide in which I show you my design for a highway on and off-ramp system which is used instead of highway interchanges to allow for better traffic flow. The tree design, as I call it, is what I have implemented in cities of different sizes and designs, and in this video I'm going to show them off to you. I have used my tree highway off and on design in a small city, one of my old cities with a bad road and zoning design, and two cities I have downloaded from the Steam workshop from other players. One is a save file of a medium city and another of a large city. And I'm going to start by showing you the medium city first. This is before I did anything to it. I just downloaded it from the Steam workshop and I found this insane looking spaghetti here with the highways, inner city highways, outer city highways, all sorts of stuff. Then there was some insanity here with 4 highways. There are 2 up here and 2 down below, and you can see just the huge traffic jams here. And if I go over here, I'm kind of afraid to even show you this, 41% when it comes to the traffic. I mean, look at this red here. It spans half the city. And then again over here. And this is pretty much a lot to do with how the city is zoned. Players don't seem to get how to zone properly, and it's something that I will have to go into in a separate video. I'll link that video up here and in the description below for anybody watching after I've actually made that video. Trying to make this video has made me realize just how bad people are at zoning and how much this influences their traffic. Now without further ado, let's go over to when I actually fixed the city with my tree highway design. And this is how the city looks now. You can see that the highways are much clearer now and much simpler. And we can start from here, from this edge, where we have 2 highways, one entering, one exiting the city, that span all the way here, but they do not leave the city as there's no other end of this highway. This highway was actually going from the left to the right, but I actually just extended it and made it something that I could pin my on and off ramps from. And if we take a look at traffic overview, we can see that the average traffic flow has improved by 20%. Now, if we take a look at the city and the highways now, and if we take a drive through these highways, you can see how little red these are, and the traffic keeps flowing. There is no place in these highways where the traffic has stalled or stopped. It just keeps on flowing. You can see even where there are red areas, this is just because there's a lot of traffic here, not because there's a traffic jam. And you can see just how better it looks all the way to here. So not a single traffic jam. And you can see how the highway off-ramps are set up so that when you have an off-ramp to each of these sides, the traffic picks to drive in the middle lane if it wants to continue. If it wants to go left, it will drive on the left lane, and on the right lane if it wants to go to the right. So this perfectly makes your traffic use all the lanes because of the lane changers here. As you can see, there's a lane going left and forward, right and forward, and in the middle. They will rarely, almost never, use these outer lanes to actually go forward. They'll just use them to turn. This forces the traffic to use all lanes and makes a nice filter for traffic. This is something I have definitely explained to you in my previous video, the one that I explained how this design works, so I won't go too much into it. You can see here the important thing is always have an off-ramp before an on-ramp so that the traffic doesn't intertwine with each other. Now I think it's time to go to the small city and see how this looks like on the small scale. As I had explained in the intro, this was one of my oldest cities, and you can see how the traffic is made to enter the city through this interchange, then some crazy roads that I made here, and then on the other side you can see an even crazier interchange here, me trying to deal with traffic without actually knowing what I'm doing. Like I said, this is my old save file, one of the cities that I made before I actually knew what the hell I was doing. And you can see the problems that I made with the traffic being at around 74%. This was actually good, but when you think about it, it's only 20,000 population and 74, so it's actually bad, and you can see how bad it is in these streets. And this is also due to bad zoning. You can see these industrial areas here, huge industrial areas, and only 2 entrances to the city, and that messes up pretty much everything. So this was the design, and now I'll show you the redesign. And this is how the city looks now. You can pretty much see how much cleaner it is. And when I go over to the traffic, 91% compared to the 74% we saw a moment ago. So you can bet that there were a lot of changes happening, and you can see them with the off-ramps going from 2 highways that are now not connected directly to each other, but have a highway in between them, which transfers the traffic between these two highways. So any outer city traffic that just passing through the city comes to this part here. These simple highway connections between two highways, and they can use this inner highway that just transfers them over to the other highway, and they leave the city. The traffic that actually enters this city uses these off and on ramps to get in and out of the core or the edges of the city, and I've purposely made it so that some of these off ramps go into the middle of the city and some of them go to the edges of the city, depending on where I want to send the traffic. And then I have some ramps that actually begin here on the edges of the city, and that mixes up where the traffic comes and goes from and makes it possible to reduce the traffic problems throughout this city. And now let's go over to my biggest challenge and the city where I must admit I've almost failed to implement this street design. This massive 400,000 people city was my greatest challenge trying to implement my tree design, especially because a lot of the roads here were missing because the player used some assets that I didn't have installed. So I was actually missing pieces of the design, and the major issue here was the way that the highways were interconnected, or better yet say, not interconnected inside the city. So I had the problem actually executing the tree design because some of the highways weren't even imported to the city. There were some avenues that were used instead. And now let's go over to the traffic overview. You can see it's at 72%. This is actually great when you look at the size of the city, but there are some horrible parts to it. And of course, again, it's all about the zoning. There is a whole lot of zones here, but they are horribly placed and horribly zoned, and this creates even worse traffic than the highway system. Now, like I said, some pieces of the highway system here are missing because the player used some custom assets that I do not have, but you can see that the highway system wasn't too bad, but the inner city traffic was what was ruining it. Now let's go over to my redesign of this huge city. Now, one important note about the city, for some reason it didn't have any water or garbage systems and had problems with power. I think this is because the player used additional assets for that or used mods to disable power, water and garbage. So keep in mind that if you see the whole city asking for water, garbage and drainage, that was not one of my problems. So here we go. Let's check out how these highways now look like. Over here you have a more complicated highway structure because I need a highway that's actually going into the city from here and traveling all the way to this connection here. So this is why this highway traffic doesn't end anywhere, it just stops here, dead end, because I have it here to be connected to this highway, which is actually the one that is a regional highway. And this one crosses another highway here because these two are connected with these simple highway off-ramps and on-ramps, and they produce just enough of an ability for these highways to change over traffic for them to be able to enter the city. Now you see what I was talking about? Try to ignore that. So here's the tree design in action. You can see the off-ramps going underground, and I'll show you in a moment where they all lead to. I'm just going to drive you through the middle of the city, as all of these ramps are part of the tree design, and they show you how the traffic enters and exits from the city and onto and off the highway. So that was the main trip through the city. Now let's go over to the traffic flow, and you can see that it's now at 83%, which is kind of better, but it's still not very good compared to what the city was, because honestly there's no helping people who make horrible zoning decisions like the player who built the city. Now you can see more easily the ramps which lead the traffic more deeper into the city, which is mostly something that you can see, I believe, over here. You can see how the ramps go all the way deeper into the city. This way I try to make the vehicles go deeper into the city so they do not make problems here at the edges of it. Over here you'll see that I made a lot more ramps, especially because of this part of the city having this problem with the inner city traffic, which I was trying to avoid getting onto my highways and using it to get from one side of the city to the other. Also, a note here is that you can see that a lot of these off-ramps have a problem because there are also roads connecting the two parts of the city. Now this is why the highways are raised. It's a bit harder to manage the ramps because of that, but the highway has to be raised so that there can be roads connecting the two parts of the city. It is something that I talked about in my original video telling you about the tree design, and I'll talk about this problem here in a moment, telling you that you have to raise the highways in order to connect two sides of the city if that's how your city is designed. Now what exactly is going on here? Well, if you take a look, you can see here that I'm telling these people to use this lane to get over here and this lane to get over here and the middle to go over here. Now why are these vehicles waiting till now to change over their lanes? If we go back, we can see that we have an on-ramp here and now we have an off-ramp. This is something that I told you not to do. I did this by accident, I didn't notice it. So by deleting this ramp here, this on-ramp, I prevent this from happening. And that is the key. The off-ramp has to be far away from the on-ramp to allow the traffic to choose their proper lane. And you'll see now the traffic moving much more easily between this area here and this area here, because they'll have time to choose the middle lane if they want to continue forward, or the left or the right lane if they want to go to any of these sides. So with this, I would like to close the book on traffic. Any traffic design can help you, but not if you don't know how to zone properly. And that is why my next video is going to be all about how to zone properly to avoid creating a disaster and a traffic nightmare like these previous cities that I've shown you have been. Because as you can see here, no amount of traffic tips or designs will help you if you don't build a proper city. Thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for more videos.